GIRLSCAMP, it's Girls Camp.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Girls Camp podcast. I'm your host, Haley Rawl, and today I am joined by Dr. Julie Hanks.
Hello,
Hi.
Haley.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to read your intro because you are a very accomplished woman.
Oh, thank
Dr.
you.
Julie Hanks is a licensed therapist, author, and speaker. You have been helping women, couples, and families for over 30 years. You are also the founder of Wasatch Family Therapy, a media contributor, and author. I think I said author twice, but worth emphasizing, right?
Thank you.
Of course. I was just telling you this when you walked in. It feels like such a special full circle moment to have you here on the Girls Camp couch because I have followed you. I followed you as an active Mormon. I followed you through my progressive Mormon phase as I was faith deconstructing, as I left the church. And I know that that is not just an experience I've had. I think you've really led and guided many people, women especially, through what is, one of the most difficult life transitions.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot. And I love that you followed me through those phases because I feel like all of the groups, however you lay them out, they're all my people. Active, progressive, post-Mormon, we all have the same history. And so
yes,
I love that I could be part of your life in all of those phases.
Yes. And I feel like you've been a very good, Rosie Card, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
She's this way as well. I feel like you have a really good way of speaking to these things, to Mormonism, the way it affects families and marriages and just high demand religion, patriarchal religions, things like that. That also, I think, serves as a bridge. Like, you're the type of person I can be like, hey, Mom, did you see what Dr. Hanks posted? And we can talk about it and it feels safe for kind of all, like you said, people across that spectrum, which I think is just so valuable.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so.
And also really hard. It's a hard space to be in.
Yeah, it is really hard.
And you've been in it for a long time.
I have been for a long time.
Yeah. When did you start on social media?
So I was on social media since you could get on Facebook.
Wow, yeah.
And I had been creating content and I've been blogging for 20 years or something like that. But things really took off on Instagram I started right after I finished my PhD in 2015. I started combining the mental health with the religious stuff.
Gotcha.
On social media. Things kind of took off maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, where I just was like, oh, wait, I guess I'm saying things that resonate with people.
Yes.
And I've had people say, you say the things I'm thinking, but I don't know how to say, or I don't know I can say them. I'm like, well, you probably can't say them. You get backlash. But
yeah, there's consequences for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with the space, especially I feel like when you have the mental health side of things, your professional expertise as a marriage and family therapist, and then you also have the faith, religious side of things. And, we've seen this in the Mormon space in a lot of instances, but there's a lot of potential, like you said, for pushback as you're kind of trying to reconcile both those sides of things.
Right. Because I haven't been orthodox enough.
Yes.
But I haven't been, and then the ex-Mormon group is like, why are you still it? And kind of, I've felt a lot of that over the years.
Yeah, a lot of push and pull, I can imagine. Yeah. Yes. Can't wait to get into it all. We have kind of a mix of, you've gone through some big personal life changes lately. Yeah,
probably like most of the big changes you can go through, I've been through in the last 7-8 months.
Which is crazy. So much at once.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about some of that and then also bringing in, of course, your expertise that you have, learned about, helped people through, and then also some of these things that you've experienced yourself.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is you've recently announced, and correct me if I'm using this language wrong. I know everyone kind of has their own way of saying it, but I'm going to say stepped away. You've recently stepped away from Mormonism in some capacity.
Right.
So I would love to talk to you about that. Let's start out with the why. Do you feel like there was a breaking point, anything significant, or a slow burn?
It was a little bit of both. So 2015, the exclusion policy was just like gut-wrenching.
And that's where the children of gay parents could not get baptized.
Or get the priesthood or, were blessed, all that kind of thing. And just before that, the gospel topics essays had come out. And so I was reading through all the essays and realizing like, the stuff I was taught was anti-Mormon is actually true. And things that I was taught were true are actually not true. And I really started, my trust started eroding in the organization, right? And then the policy happened, and I really felt like Jesus is not in this is not like, and really for the first time, I mean, I'd had faith questions and things like that before, but for the first time I was like, maybe this isn't what it claims to be. And that was just really a painful possibility.
Well, at this point, you had been a member all your life, right?
All my life. Yeah. And I had done inspirational music for 25 years, and so, yeah, like that was a scary thing to go, like, maybe it's not what it claims to be. Like, oh no, that's really hard.
So scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've been really wrestling with a lot of questions. And about that time, 2015, I started being a lot more open to just all different sources, right? Started listening to Lindsay Hansen Park's Year of Polygamy and Mormon Stories, and just like, I'm not going to kind of have blinders on. I mean, not that I ever really did, but I mean, they were pretty wide, but I kind of took them off. And I'm going to look everywhere, and I really need to figure this out. Once I got to about 100,000 followers on Instagram, then like the pushback started. Like, oh my gosh, an active person is actually saying these things. Like, this can't be. She's leading people out of the church, and so I got a ton of hate from the Desnat group,
which is like a
Deseret nationalists, like white supremacist, super right-wing, extreme
Mormon group.
Yeah.
And what kind of things, just to give the listeners an idea, what kind of things were you posting that were getting this sort of pushback and this sort of reaction?
Posting about patriarchy and how damaging that can be. I was talking about the damaging parts of rigid gender roles. I was talking about the family proclamation, and I had mentioned like that it was a legal brief before it became doctrine. So I was looking into the origins and stuff, and just posting things that would support mental health within the Mormon community.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that when I'm acting as a professional, I have ethical guidelines that I have to go by. I'm not evangelizing for the church. And Orthodox Mormons were so angry that I wasn't saying everyone should stay in the church. I was validating people who leave and saying, here's how faithful members can treat people who leave with respect, and trying to create those conversations, And it was like, she's telling people to leave. And I'm like, I don't, as a professional, I can't have an opinion on whether people should leave or not. It's like, that's your choice. And so a lot of women's empowerment, like making your own decisions about wearing the garment or drinking coffee, or like, you're the boss of you. And so many women grow up in, the Latter-day Saint faith and culture and everything, and don't feel like the main character in their life. They're a supporting character. And so I'm kind of like, women, like, even if you're in the church, you can still be the boss of you,
Yes.
And really kind of cheerleading women to create the lives they want instead of the life that's been laid out for them, or being only a support to your partner and children. And that's a big part of people's lives. And so people accuse me of like, you hate motherhood. I'm like, no, I just think women are multidimensional. And when you kind of have such a limited roles for women, it's not good for mental health.
I think that, I feel like, is the main theme I've seen in your work that is so empowering, is you aren't telling anyone what to do, but you are being objective professionally, right? And so when the facts do maybe stray from what the prophet has said, let's take garments, for example.
Yeah.
The official stance of the church would be, you wear your garments day and night, no exceptions, no questions asked. And so when you're coming and saying, if this is a significant thing for your mental health or your physical health, you get to make that decision.
Right.
That upsets people.
Really upsetting.
Because it does go against what the prophets are saying. Yeah.
Right. And one of the main values of my profession is self-determination. And so ethically bound to promote self-determination, where the church and Orthodox members want me to promote obedience and conformity. And that is not professionally what I agreed to do.
Yeah, which is really powerful too. I think that's why you being in this space has been particularly powerful, because you have the expertise to back up what you're saying is this is just what it is when it comes to mental health, identity formation,
human development.
Exactly.
Like, there are certain things that aren't very healthy. The way we deal with sexuality, the way we, force people into roles instead of letting people express who they really are.
Absolutely. So you're posting these things, you're getting a lot of pushback. You've already kind of opened up maybe a little bit to sources that many people might find antagonistic towards the church or critical of the church. Let's put you back there. What are the next steps?
So my husband gets called as bishop.
Oh my gosh.
Which was just because I was posting things that were, so that created a lot of tension, not contention. Like we were pretty chill, like in terms of, we're not big fighters or anything, but that was really, there was a lot of tension because I'm saying, the trans policy is harmful to trans people. It promotes stereotypes. Or I'm saying, the garment crackdown is sexist because garments are patterned after men's underwear, not women's underwear. And so when there's a crackdown, so I'm saying things like this out loud and with a lot of people appreciating what I have to say, but a lot of people like panicking, It was a hard place to be because I felt called to speak up and be public and speak truth, and that was really hard in my then marriage. And but I've always trusted not always, but I learned really early on to trust myself, like in my late teens, and go with my gut, and to trust, and I've never regretted it. And so this was just another part of that. Like, I really feel called to use Mormon language to speak up for women who have an LDS background. And that's mostly who I've worked with for the last 30 years too. So I know the stories, I know the patterns, I know the problems. When you hear hundreds of women coming in with the same pain, it's like, oh, maybe I could do something about it.
Well, and I'm sure there was so much pressure from so many sources to just stop, right? And even if you feel a certain way about something, there is such a massive difference between feeling a certain way, maybe talking to your friends about it, talking to your partner about it, versus publicly speaking about it. And you do have a big platform, so it's making waves. So I can imagine you're getting social pressures. Yeah. I just can imagine that's a very pressure-filled situation. So I love what you said about trusting yourself and being like, it's aligned with what you wanted to do. So you push through.
Yeah. And I felt at the time and still feel like I have this unique combination of personal experience, professional expertise, education, and I want to do something to help more people. And I'm talking a lot about the pushback, but I mostly have had positive. In Utah, it's rare that I'll go out and someone doesn't come up and say thank you. I'm sure you get that too. Like, thank you for the work you do. You helped me through this time, or you helped me in a mixed faith marriage, or helped me not reject my family members who've left the church. Like 98% are those kind of messages. Yeah,
and that's a good reminder. It's easy to focus on the push. I was just talking to my husband about this yesterday. I'm like, why is it that the pushback is so much stickier in the brain? It's so unfortunate because it just stands out, at least to me.
Yeah, it does. And because I was a performing songwriter and I've been a public figure since my late teens, I've been criticized my whole life. So I've developed skills, I think, to deal with it over time. It's still hard and stressful,
Sure.
And I don't think it's as hard and stressful for me as it might be for somebody who didn't have that,
experience.
30 plus, 40 years of
in the spotlight.
Yeah. So in that way, I felt uniquely positioned. Like, I'm used to taking criticism.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about the most recent development of stepping away. Do you feel like, you were talking about 2015, so 10 years of kind of this exploration, was there a particular breaking point for you to kind of make a little bit more of a step away, or what led you to that decision?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I was called in by my stake president and an area authority and kind of talked to. They were really great. And it's still such a unhealthy dynamic that another adult has any kind of power over another adult. Right? So it just felt,
Snaps, yeah.
So it just felt bad. So I got called in again by my stake president late last fall, and he wouldn't tell me why. And so I said, he's like, it's just to check in with you. I said, I'm doing great then. We don't need to meet. Then my bishop stopped by my house to talk to me about why he wanted to talk to me. I'm like, what? Can somebody just say, like, we're concerned about your online content? You just say it.
Just say it. Yeah, come out and say it.
Anyway, so
in the original meeting 3 years ago, did they say it was about online content?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
and they kind of said, hey, we're a little concerned about your
and
online content.
he was great. He's like, I know your heart. I know that you're not trying to weaken faith. He was just great.
Yeah, they were just kind of flagging it.
Right, like, hey, you're on our radar and we're getting complaints. So Desnat and a guy named Jacob Hansen were part of a letter writing campaign to my area authorities. So that sparked that meeting.
I see.
Right? Like, she's posting this and she can't say that and be an active member.
My gosh.
I know. When I was called in originally, I said, before I meet, I want to see all of the letters. I wrote this multi-page document tying all of them back to Desnat and send him articles about what Desnat is. I'm like,
these people don't stand for good things.
Yeah. I mean, and I showed him the violent memes, and, I just said, like, look, this is like, and I think he did later on call one of the stake presidents of someone who was harassing me online.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Because sometimes that accountability doesn't always go both ways.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So I said no to meeting with my stake president. My bishop stopped by to talk about what he wanted to, whatever, and he's a good friend of mine. Like, I've known him for 20 years.
Because have you been in the same area throughout this whole? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so he stopped by and asked if I would go and go through the temple recommend questions with him and the stake president. I looked at him and said, absolutely not. And I said, if you're worried about my recommend or my worthiness, like, you can have it, because like, I'm not doing this.
It's like they wanted you to extra prove.
Right.
It wasn't like on the timed schedule of when you would be renewing
right. No, it was,
Yeah.
I felt really targeted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I told him, no, I'm not. And we talked, and I told him I read him some of the feedback that I'd gotten from people that I'd helped, and just said, like, I'm trying to help people. There are a lot of people in our community that are in pain, and they need help, and I'm trying to minister. And so that happened, overall, he was kind, right? Benevolent patriarchy at its finest. Then my stake president called me, and I looked at it, and I just thought, you know what? I'm going to answer it and see if he'll tell me why he wants to meet. And he did tell me, when we talked, and I said, okay, I'll meet with you. And I had a friend come with me who's also a therapist.
Cool.
And I brought in, I had done a call for letters of support. And so I had close to 500 letters of support that I laid on his desk. And nice guy, right? Like, they're just doing what they're trained to do.
Sure.
So it's a system thing. It's not a personal thing.
It's a good distinction.
And we had, I got a talking to, and he read the definition of apostasy several times, and criticizing policy is under the umbrella of apostasy, which is like, tell me you're in a cult without telling me. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying it's but it's so like, really,
you can't criticize anything. Like, it's essentially, you can't criticize anything the church officially does, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Unless I'm
publicly
misinterpreting that. Publicly,
so it's basically, you can think whatever you want, but you just can't say it online. And the brethren are concerned that you're weakening faith and you're bordering on apostasy. And
let's define apostasy for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Apostasy is kind of the umbrella term for leaving the church, losing your faith.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sure the concern is when you're doing that publicly, you're kind of like endorsing apostatizing.
Right.
By
criticism. But I haven't gone against leaders. I haven't ever come out and said like the church is damaging. I've said like this policy or this thing or, take responsibility. I've been very mindful. And there, people are like, I don't agree with what you posted last year. I'm like, I don't agree with it either. Like it's, when you're doing content creation, you take sound bites from other things and sometimes it doesn't land. And so like, I'm like, I don't agree with some of the stuff I've said too.
And
like,
you're
and I
evolving
evolve.
and changing. Yeah.
Right.
As you should, as you deserve to. Yeah.
And so if I had to worry about everything I put out there, like I'd be paralyzed. So I just have been like, okay, yeah, like sometimes it doesn't land right or it comes off too critical and I can totally own that. And, just part of doing what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have this conversation with the stake president and he gives you a talking to. You have all those letters.
Yeah.
What was the outcome?
Well, it's still pretty fresh. He said that some people, I said, were these letters from outside? And he said, no, there's some people in your ward that have concerns. And that made it so it wasn't safe to go to church.
Religious guilt and constant second guessing are common in faith deconstruction, but if those things become really persistent and begin to interfere with your daily life, they can also be signs of religious OCD, otherwise known as scrupulosity. Many people incorrectly think that OCD is about being hyper-organized, obsessed with cleaning, a germaphobe, but it can actually target the things that matter most to you, including your spirituality and morals. Religious OCD often shows up as intrusive thoughts, endless spirals of self-doubt, or feeling deeply unsettled by spiritual questions that may never have clear answers. The harder you try to push those thoughts away by apologizing, researching, or mentally replaying decisions, the more stuck in the cycle you may become. Fortunately, you do not need to suffer this way forever because OCD is highly treatable through specialized therapy. Enter NoCD. NoCD is the world's leading OCD treatment provider, and their licensed therapists specialize in something called ERP, or exposure and response prevention, which is the gold standard therapy for OCD. They also respect your personal and sometimes complicated spiritual journey and will help you build skills to heal from OCD while respecting your individual beliefs. Sessions with NoCD are 100% virtual, and they are covered by insurance for over 155 million Americans. You can also access support between sessions, so you are not alone at any step of your journey. If you think you might be dealing with religious OCD, don't wait. You can book a free 15-minute call today at nocd.com. That's NOCD.com. I'm so sorry.
And so I stopped attending in January. I had stopped wearing garments a year and a half ago. And that's another thing that it's been so eye-opening. But so I stopped attending. The next month, my husband and I decided to divorce. We separated in March. So here comes all the life changes, right?
Yeah.
I moved in March to my own place for the first time in my existence.
Yeah, because you told me before we started recording, you got married at 20.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been married 36 years. I was married 36 years, and people go, well, was it because of the church that you got divorced? And I say, like, no, that was our different approaches to the church are a symptom of the core differences of who we are as people and how we approach life. So that's the easy scapegoat. Like, was that an added tension? Yeah, because he was very and is very Orthodox and works in the temple and, is a great person. We just approach life so differently. And that was expressed, one of the ways it expressed was in how we approach the church. And
makes sense because the church is such a big part of life, right? And such a big part of, how you approach life. So that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. So since February, there's just been like change after change. So I stopped attending, but I didn't announce anything publicly. And I think it was maybe in June. I was just doing a Q&A when I was traveling, and someone asked are you still active, and it was on a story. It wasn't like a big announcement, but people like, oh my gosh, the internet went crazy. And
because you had been in this public capacity, you had been very progressive and pushing back, but still active.
Yeah.
And so I do think that for a lot of people, that feels like a very, significant shift of, oh, okay, she's not active anymore.
Right.
How has it been after, kind of taking that space? How have you felt having that space and not attending anymore?
I have felt so much relief. And just like, oh, I get to be a grown-up now. Like, I didn't realize how much the church kind of puts you in a perpetual adolescent stage, kind of dictating what you do, how you spend your time and money, and how you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it just feels really good to be like, oh, I just kind of get to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely relate. And I think maybe especially you were talking about, how you're kind of trying to toe this line, which I think it sounds like from what you were saying too, that's an ethical line you hold anyway, right? You're not wanting as a professional to tell people to leave the church or to stay in the church.
Yeah.
But I can imagine there's a freedom now of
I can just say whatever I want.
You can post your professional opinion without having to worry about repercussions, without having to get a talking to.
Right,
yeah.
right. And if they decide to like hold a court or something, there's no way I would go. I mean, there's no way I would go
for like
with that.
excommunication.
I would resign. I haven't officially resigned.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't want to do the excommunication process. For those who don't know, I still haven't pulled my records, which is it's a whole thing. I actually think there's weirdly still like some hangups there, which is very interesting.
We can process that later.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I need to book a session with you is what I'm saying. But yeah, for those who don't know, if you're still technically on the records, they could say, hey, we're going to pull you in for like a disciplinary council, which could lead to them like officially kicking you out. But I feel the same. People have asked me that before. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't go to a disciplinary council. But yeah.
It's the whole idea of kicking good people out of the church when like there are criminals that are in prison that are still members of the church.
Absolutely.
It's like, go after them.
Yeah. Like we're the biggest problem. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy to hear that that's been your experience. And yeah, we were also just talking about this before recording, but the internet is only just the internet, but I've followed you closely for so long, and I've just sensed that through the phone of just kind of a freedom and like a newness, and it's like really exciting.
Thank you. I just feel like I've cleared out stuff that wasn't working for a while, and I was trying to make it work. And I feel really like 36 years of marriage. I feel so good about that. Like we raised 4 kids together. They're amazing people. My ex is great. Like he's great. He's just like, we just decided not to do the last third of our lives together,
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
And so all of these changes feel more like graduations than anything else. And then my youngest went to college a few weeks ago. And so that's another change. Plus, did I say I moved in March? So it's just been like, and started dating, and I just couldn't have imagined that my life would be here at this age. But I'm having a great time. I'm traveling a ton, which has been amazing. Really fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that piece. For anyone who's listening, maybe let's speak specifically to women here, but for anyone who's listening who may be contemplating divorce or major life change, what words of encouragement would you offer? I mean, you're speaking to your personal experience, which I think is very encouraging. But if someone's out there like, maybe they're feeling like they want to get a divorce, but obviously there's all sorts of things that come up with that.
Yeah, I would say trust yourself. Trust yourself more than your fear. Because there's so much fear that goes along with it. And especially for women who haven't had careers, the vulnerability and the fear is huge. And so I would just say trust yourself. I didn't divorce until I was 100% sure, because I knew it was such a big decision, especially after so long. I got to a point where it was just like, it was clear. It wasn't like, should we? It was just like, yep, that's the next step for me. And so I can feel 100% sure that that was the right thing. And so I don't know that everybody gets that gift of like being 100% sure, but for me, that's how it happened. It was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's time.
I love that. You were talking about, you actually mentioned earlier on that you feel like you picked up that ability in your late teens to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I do think that that is something that many people, especially people who are used to high demand religion, which, kind of by definition is putting your trust in people outside of yourself, the scriptures, the prophet, the bishop, whomever it may be. How do you feel like you learned to trust yourself?
Yeah. So luckily I was able to go to therapy in my teenage years. I went through a really difficult time when I was about 14, and my parents said, "Do you want to go to therapy?" And I said, yes. And so that started kind of on and off throughout my teenage years. I have a rebellious, I'm a rebellious people pleaser. So those were like always, and I think, there was kind of a turning point. I was a freshman at BYU when President Ezra Taft Benson gave the talk to the Mothers in Zion. And I was already performing and songwriting and professionally. I was in school, wanted to become a therapist. And here the prophet is saying, women, don't compete with your husbands in the workplace and you should be at home. And I knew that God wanted me to do, I felt, or my higher self, or what, I knew inside, I have to do what
you were so sure about your path, and it wasn't that.
Yeah. And so I just was like, okay, well, I'm going to take that parents should take care of their children. That's the message I'm going to take, and I'm going to keep doing. And I remember thinking, the prophet is not going to have to answer for my life or live my life. I am. The bishop isn't. My future spouse isn't. No one else is going to answer for my life. And so in that moment, I really was like, I get to choose. I get to choose. And I think that has served me well. And I feel so lucky that I came to that in my teens instead of so many of my clients, in their 40s, 50s. I mean, it's just great to come to it at any time. But I just feel really, really lucky that I had enough of a sense of self developed and enough of an awareness of my internal world because of therapy.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's so huge.
So lucky.
I think that you just did a recent series of posts, which I will link in the show notes, but I actually pulled from them because I just did an episode about codependence. And obviously I'm not a professional, but I'm currently, for the first time, I'm in really consistent therapy. I've done therapy throughout my life. Thank you.
I am too.
Thank you.
So.
There you go. And it's been so good for me, but I feel like one of the biggest realizations and things I'm working through is codependence. And I've been thinking so much about it, learning about it. And then you did a series of posts that I was just like, oh, this is so helpful because you were crystallizing what I was starting to sense and to uncover in therapy, which is, I think the church, at least in my circumstance, really either exacerbated, if not was kind of the root of my learned codependence.
Yeah.
And I think codependence, I didn't realize so much of it is about not being able to do exactly what you did, which is to say, I'm actually in charge of my own life.
Right.
And I'm the one who's living my life. It seems so obvious,
right?
But it actually isn't.
It's hard.
It's hard, especially because we've been taught, no, actually, you need to listen to the prophet in this example, or else your life will go to shit. So it's like, well, it's actually not my life. It's, I need to do what the prophet is telling me to do.
Right,
I need to do what, my partner is telling me to do, or my parents are telling me to do. And it's been so empowering for me in that same way you're describing, of realizing I will suffer these consequences. So I'm going to make decisions because I'm going to choose how things go,
right,
so that then I'm not suffering consequences down the line. And then I'm like, well, I was just doing what this person told me to do.
ultimately it's your life. And we're taught, particularly women are taught in the church, that you exist in the service of other people, right? Which is true, right? Like a part of a great life is being aware of other people around you and doing good and being kind. But that message is not helpful to women. Like the self-sacrificing message, we're already taught to self-sacrifice. Like we need voices saying, no, you can take care of yourself. Maybe men need self-sacrifice messages, but most women I know don't. And so I think we've grown up in this culture where we are in charge. We feel like we're in charge of other people's feelings, their happiness, their salvation, their exaltation. It's like up to us, right? The woman sets the tone of the home, and no success can compensate for failure in the home. And like we're responsible. And it's like, no, actually I'm responsible for me. And I'm responsible to take care of my kids, but I'm not responsible for their feelings. I'm not responsible to mold them. I'm not responsible for their choices. Like they're separate, or my partner, or my parents. I'm not responsible to make them happy. And that's just, for so many women, that's just like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's so different than what they've been taught. And I think, looking on kind of the opposite side of that coin of like, looking at parents, for example, and you talked about this in these posts and in these stories you were doing, but it's ironic because a parent who thinks, okay, I'm in charge of my child's salvation, for example, then they end up pushing their adult children away.
Yeah.
So it actually does the opposite thing.
Right.
It creates distance, and it can sometimes even ruin relationships.
Absolutely.
When they're trying so hard to do the thing that they think they need to do for their child, they're actually ruining their relationship with their child, which is so devastating.
We have doctrine that reinforces and quotes by leaders that reinforce enmeshment. One of the top ones that comes to mind is parenthood is a calling from which you're never released. I get what they're trying to say, but people interpret it like you're still responsible for your adult children's choices. And it's like, no, they're adults. And I've seen so many women just coming into my office devastated because a child has left the church. And it's like, I help them over time get to like, well, what does that have to do? Like, that has nothing to do with you. That is a choice that another adult made. They're not an extension of you. And we just grow up thinking like our family is just this extension of us and a reflection of our value. Mm-hmm. And that's so unhealthy. That's mentally unhealthy.
Yes. One of the things that I feel like I've noticed, I'm curious your thoughts on, but I feel like when you are told your whole life, become a mom, then you're told, don't work, don't focus on your kids. Then your kids grow up, then they leave the home. And then I feel like, understandably so, I feel like women wrestle with this feeling of, wait, I did everything I was supposed to do. And I thought the outcome was my kids stay in the church their whole lives.
Right.
I thought that was kind of like the reward, right? Or I put all of this sacrifice and energy into raising my kids in the church. So the outcome should be that they stay in the church. And I feel like there's maybe it's almost like a resentment of, I gave everything, my whole self to you, and now you're going and choosing to be who you are.
Right.
And I think a lot of women, because of this weaving through generations, they're like, well, I just did what I was expected to do. Yeah. And now you're not doing what you're expected to do. Well, that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. A ton of resentment. And you add to that a lot of women are getting divorced, and then so they don't have those roles that totally define their life, and they haven't invested in development of a self. And so it's like I'm left with kind of a void.
Yeah.
And
who am I?
Yeah. And so that's what a lot of my clients are experiencing. And then there's also resentment that I gave up my dream to be a doctor. I gave up my dream to be an artist. Because I thought that was the right thing. And now, like, I have nothing, but like my kids have left the church. My husband and I, what's left? And now I don't even believe in the church.
Yes. Yeah. What has this sacrifice given me?
Right.
I want to talk about identity discovery, development, however you would frame that, because that does seem to be such a strong theme of your work. And I think that that's so beautiful, especially relevant in this community, but also kind of like the point of life, right?
Yeah.
Is like discovering really who you are. And so I think that that's something that people can relate to no matter where they came from or what they were taught. If someone comes into your office, I know it's almost always, I'm sure, a case by case to some extent, but what are the sorts of things or ways you guide people into finding themselves?
Yeah. So part of what I do is help them figure out like how, kind of understanding how they got here. Like, what are the factors that have been at play in your development? So then we can kind of like deconstruct and heal and feel the emotions about it. A lot of people think you go to therapy and they give you advice, and that's rarely what therapy is. It's a processing trauma, pain, grief, about like unlived life or unlived expectations or actual something that happened to you, trauma. Like, how did you get here? When did you abandon yourself? What were the factors that kind of gave you that? What patterns did you learn about what it means to be a woman or communication, right? So like understanding that past. And then in the present, recognizing like, okay, what do I think, feel, want, and need now? Like in this moment, so many people cannot identify their thoughts. They're not used to thinking about their thoughts, identifying their feelings, asking themselves what they want or what they need. And so we kind of start there with like, okay, every day ask yourself. And if you don't know, like we got to do some work there. So many women I've worked with have never or rarely asked themselves, what do I want for my life?
Wow.
We're talking adult.
Yeah.
What do I want for my life? It's like I didn't have time to stop and ask myself. I was just doing the right thing. And it's heartbreaking.
It really is. And I think that, it's interesting that the first answer to that, because this is, I think, kind of indicative of what I'm working through in therapy and how my mind works, is I'm like, okay, well, just tell me what to do then.
Right.
I want to find myself. So what should I do to find myself?
Yeah.
And so much of what my therapist is always calling me back to is like, it's almost like yourself is there already. You just have to unlearn all the things that were exactly put on top of that. Yeah. And that's painful. And hard and uncomfortable.
It's really hard work. And part of like once people identify what those four things, like then it's taking a step to honor that. People are like, I don't know what I want to do. I have to get a job now and I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, what lights you up? Like, well, I've really loved like floral arranging. Like, okay, well, why don't you like take a class and like just do something different? Take one step toward that thing that you might want. It's like and a lot of that process is knowing what you don't want. Like, I don't want this, but picking a thing that you do want and then taking one step and then going, reevaluating. Okay, how does this sit with me? And tuning in and just practicing coming back to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And just trying things.
Right.
That you want to try.
And so many in the church and kind of the covenant path, we short circuit the developmental process of people getting married and having kids really young in like teens and 20s. Like that's the age where you explore different things and different relationships and you find what you like and what you don't like. And we just kind of bypass that. And so the developmental process is really similar. It's like, try a bunch of different things. What do you like? What kind of relationship do you want? What interests you? And a lot of times I'll have women go back to, what did you love as a child? What brought you joy as a child? Because so often women have abandoned whatever that thing that brought them joy, whether it's like dancing or, climbing trees and it's like, how can we incorporate that back into your life in some way? It might have to be modified, right? You're used to ballet dance and you're 60 and you don't want to, but like take a class, do something that honors that thing. Cause I really feel like we have those those passions and interests for a reason. That's part of our gift to the planet.
Yeah.
And in LDS culture, particularly, I mean, men are taught to abandon their dreams too, but particularly women. They're not even sanctioned in like a career path or, higher education or.
Yes. I've talked about this a lot with my husband because in starting this podcast, I feel so fortunate because I feel like it's like my inner child is overjoyed that I get to do this. Like when I think about who I was as a kid, I'm like, I didn't know podcasting was a thing then, but it was like essentially almost exactly what I wanted to do, which is just so lucky. And I feel really, really fortunate for that. It wasn't really until finding this because I've worked all throughout my marriage and even through having kids. And so I've had so many conversations with my partner, my husband, Bentley, and it's been really interesting to talk about what you just said with kind of the difference in the conditioning between men and women who grow up in Mormonism because yes, to your point, I still feel like my husband, he has a creative career. He's a cinematographer, and that's been something that I admire so much about him. He's really pushed to do something that lights him up, to do something that he loves, and it's not been without a lot of obstacles. But I was telling him once, yes, I can understand that the pressure to provide and make money is really stressful. And there's so much to say there about how much it's caught up into, I think, the male identity of like exactly how much money they make and exactly how well they provide. And I've told him like, I'm not envious of that. And that's a completely different experience. However, since you were a child, you knew you had to do something. Since I was a child, I was told, you got to be a mom. Right. And so it's very different. And so for my brain, there's like almost this extra thing to overcome of like doing anything beyond being a stay-at-home mother is a big push against all my internal conditioning.
Yeah. So I have labeled that aspirational shame. Because even though I did the things I wanted to do, I still felt shame about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Bingo.
So it's the feeling that something is wrong with me for wanting something outside of the prescribed roles. And so that was I felt like I've had to claw my way through like the cultural conditioning and just how things are set up to support men's careers and the expectations of, there's just such high expectations for women.
It's exactly that. I mean, I was telling you, my daughters just started preschool, and up until they started preschool, we've had childcare. So we've had someone come to our home and watch the kids. I was talking to another friend about this who's also a working mom who has a daughter the same age, which is also so nice because we get to like talk about this together. And she actually was not raised Mormon, which is also interesting, but she was raised in Utah. And we were saying, I didn't realize how much guilt I felt around having a nanny until now my kids are in preschool, because now I feel like, oh, well, regardless, even if I was a stay-at-home mom, I would still put my kids in preschool. So I don't feel like I have to justify the childcare. And that's a perfect example of that. I felt like I had to justify childcare.
Right.
Me, the woman in the relationship.
Right. Even though they're your husband's kids too.
Exactly.
And he's gone doing his work.
Exactly.
But how many men feel guilty for going to work? No, they're like, I'm a rock star. I'm doing great, you know? And women beat themselves up.
Yep.
And I remember a time in my life where I just had our third child. I was still really involved in music and performing and writing. I had my practice, and I just was like, I suck. Like, I suck at everything, I'm neglecting my kids. I'm neglecting my practice. My creativity is not, And then I stopped and I asked myself, well, what would you do if you were a man? Like, how would you feel? How would you be experiencing this? And I'm like, I would probably think, oh my gosh, everything in my life is growing. Like, my family's growing. My practice is thriving. Like, I need more assistance. I need help to support this amazing life I've created. And so I hired a home assistant. I hired an office manager at my practice because I was kind of managing the whole thing. And I realized the biggest problem that women have is that they're under-supported for what they're trying to do. Even stay-at-home moms. Like, stay-at-home parenting doesn't mean like 100% of the household chores have to be yours, or you
still need help. You still
I've
need breaks.
never met a woman that had enough support for what she was trying to accomplish.
Oh my gosh.
Ever.
This is actually crazy because literally last night we were at the park. I ran into like an old friend, a man. He has recently started like a YouTube channel, and he was like, yeah, who edits your episodes? Because he has an editor from day one. Like he's never edited his episodes. I'm on 2.5 years. I'm still editing my episodes. I hate it. I don't like editing.
So why are you still doing it?
It's crazy, Julie. Last night I was
you're
telling
not supposed to hire.
Yes.
You're supposed to be frugal.
Exactly. I don't feel like I can justify it. And I was saying this to Bentley, and I'm also very fortunate because I feel like my husband is so supportive. And it kind of crystallized to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, exactly what you said. If I was a man, I would just hire an editor.
I'm not going to edit this.
Yes.
Like that's
I'm
not what
an
I
editor.
do.
I don't need to edit. And I was realizing like how much of my time goes to editing. It all just
Are
kind
you
of crystallized
hiring an
for me.
editor?
Literally, I am. Well, first of all, I'm hiring an assistant.
Okay.
And an
Yay.
assistant is going to help me find an editor.
Yes, that is perfect.
Yes, that's what Bentley said. He was like, just find someone who can find the right editor. And I was like, oh my gosh, why have I been trying to do this myself this whole time?
Because you're trained that that's your job and that's where your value and identity lie. And it's bullshit. Like women are suffering because they're not saying, I deserve support.
Yeah.
So when I hired a home assistant, it wasn't a nanny, it was a home assistant. It was like, I could be home and I hired a female. So she would go like do the Target run. She would fold the laundry. And I could take the kids to the park, and then some days I would be at work and it was just like, yeah, this is what most men have in a wife. Like, so I would always joke to my husband, I'm like, I need a wife. Like, where's my wife? You know?
We all need a wife. Seriously.
So that was a big like, oh my gosh, I've been so grossly undersupported for having 2 careers, 3 kids.
Crazy.
And feel the burden of, I didn't feel the full burden of household. My husband and I have been pretty good in terms of partnership with the unpaid work. But
I know, I'm sorry about this
okay.
fly. It's going to be the 3rd member of our interview. If you're watching on YouTube, we have this freaking fly. Yeah.
Anyway, I was in the middle of a sentence and I forgot what I was saying. But
I am so appreciative of you sharing that. I think that's so, so huge and so, so helpful. And especially, I just want to underscore what you said about stay-at-home parents, that is a massive, massive, massive job. I mean, I feel like I say this all the time because I've done both, because I have been a full-time stay-at-home parent. I would choose working outside the home because I think it's way harder. It's complicated. There's so many facets of it. And so, yes, you also deserve support, even if the work is not paid work.
Yeah, we need to value paid and unpaid work equally. And paid work always trumps.
Always.
And it's not right. Like, it shows how little we value unpaid work.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, I recognize that hiring and paying for help is a total privilege that I have because I had an education, a career, and that not everyone's in that position.
Yeah, same.
And you can still ask for support. You can require more of your partner. You can swap with your neighbor, baby. Like, there are creative ways to get the support that you need without having to pay for it. And I, again, acknowledge like all of the many ways that I'm privileged to be able to do that. And I've helped people in my practice who aren't in that position, who's like, okay, babysit swap. So you have a day off a week, or, right, like you know, ask for help from family or from the church. Like, if you're paying 10% to an organization, like, get some, like, use
check in some of that. Yeah. Cash in some of that.
Yeah,
yes,
really.
Absolutely.
And so again, I just want to like acknowledge total privilege here. And there are ways that any woman could ask for support that they're not doing.
Yeah.
No matter what their situation is. And just allowing yourself to say, like, I need more support. I am drowning. I'm not okay.
And you deserve support.
Right.
Yes. Whether or not you're making money.
Right.
I want to talk about a little bit of a pivot. I want to talk about mixed faith dynamics, whether that's in marriage or in immediate family, extended family. This is something people ask me about a lot. And for context, I am in a mixed faith family dynamic in the sense that I still have extended family members who are Mormon. But my husband and I, we left the church pretty much at the exact same time, which I feel like is pretty rare and
Whoa.
so lucky.
So
I know.
lucky.
I know.
So lucky.
I feel bad when people ask. I'm like, I'm sorry.
We're on the same page,
Yeah,
so I can't help you.
I know, and I don't think I would have fared well. It sounds really, really hard to go through mixed faith marriage, especially. So maybe let's start there, because you've mentioned that you see a lot of this in your practice.
Yeah.
And I would also add, I think, even if people leave the church at a similar time or they're not in the church at all, I think mixed faith dynamics, it's kind of a spectrum, right? Like you don't always believe the exact same thing as your partner.
Yeah.
If someone's really struggling in a mixed faith dynamic, I know that's also quite broad.
Yeah.
But what are some things that immediately come up for you that help people?
Yeah. So the first thing is, don't make it about you. The fact that they're staying or the fact that they want to leave or they don't believe, like it's not about you. If your child leaves, if your parent leaves, like we personalize it and make it about us. And we really need to start seeing other people as like individuals with like their own choices and not as reflections of us. It's painful, it's hard, and the stakes are so high. For the Orthodox, like loss of eternal family, loss of, covenant blessings, and the stakes are so high. But in conversations, I often will say, lead with feelings, not facts. So many times the person who's withdrawing from the church or has questions or whatever, like wants to download all the facts they've learned. Did you know Joseph Smith? Blah, blah, blah. Did you know the Book of Abraham? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever. And that just never goes well unless the person's, really open to it. But to say like, I found out some things about Joseph Smith that have really been painful for me. Like that's totally different, and that's vulnerable, and that can create intimacy, where if you're just downloading, the other person's walls are going to come up, right? But it's leading with feelings over fact. Just, I'm really ambivalent about going to church. I'm really sad that I found out some things that I had believed aren't true, without actually having to like say what all the things are. And I know that people who are deconstructing like want to share that. It may not be with your family member that you share it with. It may be a friend. It may be, an online forum. Because people aren't ready. And if you're talking to someone about something they're not ready to hear, it's going to hurt the relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's not worth it.
Right. People sometimes get ready. They realize, or they get more curious. But generally, I found that leading on either side, leading with how it feels. So for the Orthodox person saying like, I feel really scared that you're drinking now. My grandpa was an alcoholic, and that scares me. Not you're bad because you're not following the word of wisdom. You're right. Just leading with emotion. Like, this is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
That can really, really help.
Yeah. That's really useful. When I told my family I left the church, which has been so long now, but they did ask me why. And I had kind of decided beforehand to say, I basically said like, the way that you feel that it's true, I now feel that it's no longer true or right for me.
Yeah.
Because I realized that oftentimes people who leave religion, they have like a burden of proof, and they feel like they have to justify the reasons why they left. Whereas people within a faith, because of, messaging of like the Spirit told me, or I prayed about it and God told me it was true. I was like, oh, I kind of feel, when all is said and done about why I left the church, I could rattle off literally at this point thousands of reasons. But ultimately, the reason that really counted was it just didn't feel true or right for me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like, what people get to say within the church, right? Is like, I believe that this is true and that this is right and this is my life path. And I think you're totally right that as soon as you even get into the smallest amount of weeds, it's just like, because it's too emotional.
Right. It's not for both parties,
Yes.
right? I mean, people who leave tend to go, well, they're so, but there's judgment on all sides. There's belittling, there's name calling. And like, if we can just have respect for people as individuals getting to choose what they believe, and that it's not like, it doesn't have to be threatening. Mm-hmm. It can be, you can be closer because of it. Mm-hmm. And it's also, I think, really important for people who leave to not try and bring everyone with them. Just, it's like you're being a missionary for ex-Mormonism instead of, it's the same thing.
Yeah, in the opposite way.
Right.
Yeah.
So there has to be that respect.
Yeah.
And for those who are leaving, I often will say, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You can simply share or not share. You can say, I've decided to leave. I don't want to talk about it with you.
Period.
Yeah. It's amazing. I frequently do Q&As on my stories.
Yeah.
And people say, what do I say in this situation? And I just repeat back to them exactly what they say.
I've noticed
Have
you
you
doing
noticed
that?
that? And I'm like, we just don't give ourselves permission to say, like, I actually don't want to have this conversation anymore.
Someone will be like, okay, I don't want to go to my niece's baptism. I don't know what to do. What should I do? And you'll just write it out.
It's just like, I don't want to go to my
We will
niece.
not be attending the niece's baptism.
Exactly.
But we love you. We'll see you after. You
But
know?
that's part of the enmeshment culture, where it's not okay to say something that's uncomfortable or that might hurt someone's feelings or that might upset someone. It's like, someone else's upset is not your problem. Mm-hmm. It's our job to be aware, right? And not intentionally hurt people. But like, we have grown up being aware of, like, feeling responsible for, I can't tell my parents because they'll be devastated. It's like, okay, like, are they really that fragile? And some people are, right? And you don't have to tell everybody.
But also in that case, you probably aren't going to please them anyway. That's another thing I've learned is, like, it's a losing game when you are living your life to please everyone else. It is 100% a losing game.
Yeah.
And so you may as well just, like, release yourself of that burden anyway.
Yeah.
One follow-up question I want to ask to that is, I think that there are a lot of people, speaking of people who leave the church, who, let's say, it's not even that they have to be queer themselves, but people, like, something I struggle with is, and I guess the way I try and navigate it is, like, I try and separate the organization and its harm from the individual and their belief. But I do still sometimes find myself feeling this feeling of, like, I now believe that the church does cause harm to certain groups of people. Mm-hmm. And it pains me that people that I love and respect are either complicit in that harm or, you know, depending how you see it with paying tithing, maybe even actively participating in something that I think ultimately does cause harm to people.
Yeah. So what's your question about that?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because
like,
it's,
yes, that happens, and ultimately,
but there's not, like, anything I guess I need to do about it, right? Like, what am I going to do?
They're like, they get to be complicit.
Yeah.
And you get to be upset, and you get to draw boundaries around your interaction if that's painful for you.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm kind of like, okay, yep, they do. They do that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we do things that bug them and that they don't agree with.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I just wish people would just stay in their own business.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's actually so interesting, because even in that question, it's that feeling, it's that missionary spirit in me of, like,
I got to stop them from doing this.
Yes.
It's like,
I need to fix this. I know something that I need to pass on. I need to make someone understand something that I know is objectively true. And it's a little more complicated than being in the church, because, you know, now I feel like, well, I'm more backed up by, like, statistics of the actual harm.
You can say, like, no, this is actually true. You're not wanting to see this, but they get to not see it.
Yeah.
And you get to use your voice and your platform to advocate and do for social justice and for fairness. And everyone ultimately gets to decide. And so trying to change someone's, if they're not open to it, like, I have a rule. I don't give people my opinion unless they ask, because it never goes over well. And I feel like I have some good things to say about a lot of stuff, you know? But, like, with my adult kids, I will not give them advice. I will not say, hey, have you thought? No, like, ask me. If you want to know, ask me, because then I know you're open to it and it's going to help our relationship instead of hurt it.
That's very, very helpful. I really appreciate that. And I think, too, that I'm really working on this, even just in my marriage with, like, the codependent thing. I'm really working on and I've told Bentley this and I've talked about this, and bless his heart because it's been 10 years, but I finally am like, oh, when you are upset, it is not my job to fix it.
Yeah.
And you don't want me to fix it. And when I try and fix it, or when I try and offer advice, or when I try and point out, oh, you're overwhelmed, well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's because of that, that is actually fostering disconnection. And my therapist always reminds me, validation does not even mean that you think, we had this whole thing with Bentley and I where, long story short, we got in a little tiff at the airport. And he felt like I had said something that was controlling. And I told my therapist, I say controlling things all the time, and I am always willing to apologize. But when I was like, but I didn't say anything controlling this time. And she's like, regardless, he still felt controlled, period. Yeah. And you don't have to.
You don't have to agree.
Exactly.
I swear, if people could get that, like,
it's
validation.
Huge. It's hard.
Validation does not mean agreement. And nobody needs you to solve anything. Like, you are not the boss of them. And what I've come to realize is that it's likely you're trying to help him because his upsets you.
100%.
So you're trying to alleviate your own upset.
It's about my discomfort.
Right. So if you can sit with your discomfort or set emotional boundaries enough so where it's like, oh, he's upset. Like, it has nothing to do with me. Maybe there's a part that I played in this dynamic. Maybe I'm willing to look at that. But like, I am not responsible for this, and it doesn't have to impact me.
Exactly.
I don't have to feel his feelings.
No, it's so massive, especially because the way we both work from home. Oftentimes, like, a lot of our work stress overlaps into the other person, and he can come upstairs now and be stressed about work, and I can say, I'm so sorry, you're dealing with a lot. That sounds really hard.
That sounds really hard is like, and my kids will use that back on. We have like certain phrases they'll say back to me, and I'm or like making a request, like, it would mean a lot to me, Mom, if you would do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh,
you're like, damn it, I taught you too well. No, that's really so huge, and it's something that I'm really working on, but I kind of hadn't applied it in that context as well. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to ask you is, what are you looking forward to right now? What is lighting you up right now? We kind of talked about this a bit at the beginning, but I mean, first of all, thank you for today, for everything. I really, really mean it, and just so appreciative of all of your wisdom. And I feel like you really do, to borrow a phrase from the church. I mean, this is a phrase elsewhere as well, but I feel like you really lead by example. And so when you're saying these things, it's like, I feel that you've lived that and you've learned that. And so it just, I think, translates in a particularly powerful way because of that.
Thank you. That's
You're
so,
welcome.
thank you. I have done a ton of work, like, personally, and professionally. Like, I've worked, so thank that, like, I'm going to let that sink in.
Yes.
So I appreciate that.
No, I mean it. I really do. And just so grateful, you've been talking about speaking up, and your willingness to speak up is how you can affect so many people and so many women. So that's just huge.
Thank you. So what I'm looking forward to.
Yes.
So I mentioned traveling.
Yes. Are you going anywhere fun soon?
I am going to Toronto, Canada. Going to Madrid, Spain. I'm going to Montana next weekend. I am going to Puerto Vallarta. So like, this is all booked. Like the end of the last part of the year. So I'm looking forward to that. I look forward to, well, my motto is because I can. This year is like, I'm doing this because I can. And so I'm just looking, like, I'm having fun dating, which is so after 36 years, right? Like, I had one boyfriend before I met my husband.
No way.
Yeah, for 6 months, So,
oh my gosh.
So like, this is a whole, like, talking about developmental. It's kind of like I'm going through my developmental stage, at my age. But so I'm looking forward to that. I love spending time with my family, and I have 5 grandkids, and I watch the one that lives in Utah. I watch her on Friday afternoons, and that's just like, makes me cry. Like, grandkids are like the best, like, just all love and none of the work. It's so great. So I look forward to that. And I'm just having a ton of fun, like, doing things with friends and with family, and, going to movies and concerts and dinner, and just kind of having a really good time. I'm also working on a book.
No way.
Yeah. So I haven't actually signed the contract yet, but it's kind of in the works for,
Oh my gosh.
on helping women with an LDS background develop a self.
Incredible. We need it.
Yeah, because that's like all my clients.
Yeah.
I had to go through that, like, and I'm always going through that myself. Like, okay, checking in with myself, but like, how do you do that? Like, people go, I don't know who I am. Now what? I'm kind of going to try to break that down. Like, okay, here are some steps you can actually do. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, I'm so excited for that.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
all so exciting. As you were talking to, I was thinking about, this is a whole nother tangent, but in a nutshell, I have developed like a pretty intense fear of aging, I feel like. And I think part of it, I'll give a little context, is my dad died quite young at 54 a couple of years ago. And so it's less a fear of like getting older and more like fear of mortality, I guess,
Gotcha.
which feels like a distinction.
Yeah.
But I was talking to my mom one day on the phone. My mom and I are really close. And she was like, I don't know. I maybe asked her like, well, yeah, what'd you do today? And she's like, oh, I read my book on the couch for a couple hours. And I was like, that sounds awesome.
You're like, okay, sign me up for that.
I was like, that sounds really, really great. And I think that, this is a society thing, a cultural thing. Just, we all know that women get devalued as they age in so many ways.
Right.
And so I feel like you having kind of this renaissance, all this newness is really inspiring to me, because it's like, there's so much life to live and there's so much to look forward to.
Yeah.
And as women who are kind of told like, you peak at 25, it can feel not that way.
Yeah.
So it's really inspiring to hear that from that perspective too.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy. I'm having so much fun. I feel so light. I feel so much lighter. And I really had no idea that I could have this great of a time in my mid-50s like that. Because you don't think like LDS woman in your mid-50s, you're like grandma and like, you think of like the roles,
Relief
right?
Society president.
Yeah. And you're not like, travels the world. And, so I'm just so grateful. And I thank my inner child, my inner teenager, my inner 20-something, like, thank you for guiding me here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just hope that women will trust themselves. And I don't have the perfect life, and I've had my share of pain, and, but I'm at a really good place, and I just feel so relieved.
Yeah. I love that so much. Thank you, Julie. Seriously, thank you so much for
Haley.
being here.
So fun.
I will make sure to link all the things. So if people aren't following you, I'll link where they can find you on all the platforms so they can follow along. We will all be waiting impatiently for that book. And if you want more Julie, go to the show notes. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Talk to you next week. Bye.